A better time with over 140 channels in your vehicle. Your all-access trial includes more than ever before to enjoy online, on your phone, or at home. Create your own ad-free personalized stations powered by Pandora. Hear ad-free extra channels and enjoy favorite shows with SiriusXM video on demand. What you love is on now.
Hey guys, what's going on? Thanks for tuning in to another lunchtime learning session. I'm your host, Ben Wu, for CMA Connected, presented by SiriusXM. Lunchtime learning session is what we do. Hope everybody's enjoying their week so far. We, of course, midweek. And on today's session, we're talking about integration. And no bigger name in integration than ADS, iData Link, Maestro. In particular, we're going to be spotlighting with one of their big distribution partners here in Canada, based out of Montreal, and that is, of course, Sobel Imports. So to join me today is the man himself, Chris Vassiliou from Sobel. What's going on, Chris?
Hey, how's it going, Ben?
You know what? I think things are lightening up a little bit. I miss Montreal. I haven't been there in a bit, and you're in Ontario. My parents are there. I think we talked about this a little bit. I see the Americans traveling, right? I'm talking to all the guys out there.
They're enjoying life, buddy. They're enjoying life.
You know what? They're going out there again. They're going out there and seeing their customers, doing training and stuff. Do you miss that at all, man?
I do miss it. I do miss the travel, meeting people in person, but things are looking a little bit better right now, right? So we'll see what happens.
Absolutely, absolutely. Because I know you obviously do some miles, right? I mean,
lots of it.
You cover a big area. Sobel's got a big lineup to cover.
Of course.
A lot of customers to deal with. But today we're focusing on one brand, which obviously you guys have been partnered with for quite some time now.
Yeah.
And that is Maestro. So talk to us a little bit about your relationship with Maestro and how important that is for your customers.
Well, with what's going on in the industry, cars are changing constantly. So Maestro and ADS has the right product for integration, right? So it's a very important product to Sobel Imports.
Yeah, I mean, you guys have always been in that category of being a solutions provider.
For sure,
with all
and
the
category
great brands
is growing every year. It's growing every year.
And, I mean, I can only imagine. I'm going to ask our expert specialist here when he comes on in a bit. But, car audio is up. The interest for car audio is up. So when it comes to car audio, you need source units. And when it comes to source units and integrating into their original equipment sound system, you're going to need some type of solution. And that is what Maestro provides. Have you felt or seen a little bit of an increase on the movement of this product line?
Yeah, dramatically. And ADS is doing a lot of changes. They're making a lot of changes and new products are coming out. So yeah, it's definitely helping out our sales and for all the clients out there.
And just to note, I want to say this is a Canadian company for those that don't know. For our Canadian dealers that are tuning in, Automotive Data Solutions based in Montreal. Mm-hmm. And their engineering and everything is there. And they've just grown and become such a huge provider in that solutions market for integration. And pretty excited. We had a chance to sit down with this gentleman back during Industry Week where he came in and really did an overview of what's new. Very excited to see what he has to talk about today. Maybe some updates for us. Maybe get to pick his brain a little bit. Well, I definitely will pick his brain. You guys know me. His name is Matt Yerger from Maestro, and he's joining us today. Welcome again to CMA, Matt.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Oh, always a pleasure to have you on. So you see, we got Sobel in the house. We've got iData Link, Maestro in the house. So I am curious. Well, before we get started, Matt, update us. How's everything been with iData Link and Maestro for this season so far? As we're coming close to, we're in June now. So how's the season been?
Really good, actually. I mean, we are way up from where we thought we would be. So obviously, retailers are supporting and selling our product, which is great. And, we're just doing the best we can to focus on releasing newer solutions for some of the later model vehicles, some areas where we feel that there aren't really any solutions available on the market. So, yeah, things have been excellent. We have a lot of new stuff coming very soon. So a lot of exciting stuff. So
as a solution-based enterprise, right? It's all about staying ahead of the curve and trying to forecast what the next application will be. But I guess maybe give some insight because there's a lot of engineering involved in even creating a new product. So it can't be something that you just say, hey, let's do this one and next month.
Oh yeah, it's unbelievable. When I started I had worked at Kenwood prior. I had worked for Kenwood for 12 years. So obviously I worked very closely with the guys at Maestro, and I just thought what they did was amazing. Had no idea how they did it. And when I started, I actually went up there and got to see what the engineers are doing. And I mean, it's an amazing process, but it is an amazing product to go along with it. People always, talk about our reliability and how well our products work. They don't have issues with them. And a lot of that has to do with how much time we spend engineering these products. We want them to be bulletproof when they release into the market. And we take pride in how well our product works.
I for one, and I'm going to ask Chris this in a second, I'm always amazed when I see that checklist of features when it comes to Maestro, like, oh my God, steering wheel control, check, rear camera, check, check. Like, basically it does exactly what I expect it to do. And it's all being thought out. Is that the same type of feedback you get from customers, Chris?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. Okay. So what are we learning about today, gentlemen? Matt, what's on the agenda?
So I want to talk about some of the exclusive features that we offer. I know there's a lot of interface options out there, but I want to talk about some of the exclusive things that you will get when you buy a Maestro RR or RR2. What am I getting when I spend a little bit extra money to purchase this? And then in addition to that, I want to touch on where I didn't talk about last time a little bit more in depth on some of the RR2 added features, because, I think there's still some retailers that see that we released an RR2 and they might know one or two of the features that it offers, but I really want to go in depth and talk, a little bit more in depth about some of the new features we've added, like the programmable outputs, the Bluetooth flashing, stuff like that. So,
and there was a new website that was recently put out too, wasn't there?
Yes. So we have a brand new Maestro website, and it's a lot different than the old one. And I know for retailers that were experienced with our old website, there's always going to be a little bit of a learning curve, but I want to talk about what we're doing differently on the website and some of the new tools that we're providing to the retailer that's going to, in the long term, once you understand it and learn it, going to make your life a lot easier and provide you with the tools to troubleshoot your products, yourself without having to call tech support. So,
all right, so let's get started. Here we go.
Okay, so like I said, I want to start out by figuring it. There we go. Okay, I want to start out by talking about some of the exclusives that you get when you buy a Maestro RR or an RR2. And I start always my training out like this because I feel it's very, very important to establish, why our interface may cost a little bit more than somebody else's interface. And there's a lot of reasons, but these particularly I feel are very, very important for not only you as a retailer to understand, but for you to be able to explain it to the customer, because really at the end of the day, the customer just sees dollar signs. They don't understand why this module costs more than that module. And these particular things that I'm going to cover here are probably the most important out of all of the things that we do extra. The first one is vehicle settings. And in my opinion, this was probably the most important one, just because we've been doing this for a long time and we haven't really put a lot of emphasis on it because, 5-6 years ago, vehicle settings was almost non-existent. And for the cars that were doing them, like Chrysler, they were really like, I usually call them like non-features, things that a customer didn't even know existed and probably would never adjust them. But now that we're in 2021, we're seeing those menus grow, those settings grow exponentially. They're vital to the operation of the vehicle. And so when you take out your factory radio, those settings are locked wherever they are, right? So wherever they were set when you got out of the car or pull the radio out, that is where they're going to stay. And if you use any radio replacement solution on the market, most of them can't retain those menus. They just are stuck where they are. And the only way to make any changes is to reinstall the factory radio. But when you use a Maestro RR in any vehicle that we support that had factory vehicle settings in the factory radio, we transport them right on to the aftermarket radio. Now, obviously, it does have to be a Maestro compatible radio to do this, But the bottom line here is, if you have a customer that's concerned about losing those vehicle settings in the menu, you can ensure them that they're not going to lose any functionality of them. We read all the menus on CAN bus, and we just repopulate them onto the aftermarket screen. Of course, the actual way you get to those menus will slightly change, but the overall operation will not. They won't lose any control.
Hey, Matt, can I clarify that something? You're calling this a Maestro exclusive. Are you saying this is the only integration piece on the market that could do this?
Yeah, so we're the only integration piece on the market that can retain the factory vehicle settings and allow them to work as they did on an aftermarket radio.
Very nice.
Nobody else can do it. There are some solutions that provide a separate screen that they install, like say in the case of this vehicle, they would have a screen below the radio that will allow them to control some of those settings. Obviously, those kits are a lot more expensive because it's not just plastics. Right now, you've got an LCD screen that connects in. And in this case, say like the Durango as an example, which we're looking at here, we just keep the factory radio controls. We keep the factory hard button climate. You would actually lose all of that capability in order to make room for that screen. And then, you would also do your climate on that screen as well. So it doesn't look quite as OEM. And it also increased the cost of the dash kit considerably, because now instead of it just being the plastics and the brackets and the wiring harness, you're adding an LCD screen, a touchscreen LCD screen into there. So that also kind of plays into the fact that, our kits, although are priced comparable to some of the other kits on the market, the aesthetics, the plastics we use, the quality of the kit, it's much more OEM looking. I feel most customers, given the option of the two, are going to choose this because it looks a lot more factory. So, but yes, to answer your question, to be able to do it just like the factory on the aftermarket radio, we are the only ones that can do that currently. So some other features that are exclusive are the ability to not only retain the reverse camera, which everybody does, but we can also retain multiple camera views. So for vehicles that come with a camera that has, say, 3 different views, and I picked Honda as an example here. They have a wide view, a straight back view, and a straight down view. Those are all controlled from the factory touchscreen through these little buttons here. Now, when you replace the radio with an aftermarket, you lose those buttons. Obviously, the buttons are part of the screen, so they're gone. But the ability to change the camera angle stays. It's just done over CAN. So we actually read all that information on data, and the RR can tell the aftermarket radio one of 2 ways how to switch that. So the first is using a source key. And now I know some people will say, well, I don't want to lose one of my steering wheel buttons to be able to switch my camera view. That's not as important. But we don't actually do that. What we do is when the vehicle is placed in reverse, the reverse camera comes up. And when we sense that the vehicle is in reverse, that source key is now told to do something else. So when you're driving or you're in park, source will do source. When you put it in in-reverse and you press the source key, now it's going to toggle between the different camera views. So you're not losing any functionality. You're just having a way to retain your different camera angles. And this will work for pretty much any vehicle. It works in Ford, it works in Chrysler, it works in Toyota. Any vehicles that have these multiple camera views, we're able to switch them. The operation will vary slightly depending on the vehicle. I know in Honda we use a source key. I think in Ford we use the seek up and down. So again, you just have to check the owner's guide. But the bottom line is that we're able to retain it. Now, on some vehicles, on some aftermarket radios, they have hidden keys on the camera screen. So take Kenwood Kenwood and JVC as an example, are one that do it. When you're in reverse and you're looking at the backup camera, there's hidden buttons on the left and right hand side of the screen. So if you're using one of these radios that supports this, you can either do it from the steering wheel button, or you can just tap on the left or right hand side of the screen to toggle it. So for radios that don't have that, you would use the steering wheel button. For radios that do, you can either use the steering wheel button or the touchscreen buttons as well.
And just to be clear, this is only relevant to those OE systems that already have that multi-view function built in.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
If the camera from the factory had this capability, we are able to control it. Yep. And a lot of your new cars do. I mean, most of them are now providing this from the factory. My wife's brand new Volkswagen has it. So it's definitely a feature that we saw, I think, first with Ford, and now we're starting to see it with all companies. And that's why it's a lot more relevant now than it was a few years ago when we just covered Ford. Now we're covering all the other vehicles as well. So, and the nice thing about this too is this is a feature that is reliant on the firmware that's on the RR. So let's say you had a customer that bought a car that at the time we didn't cover the ability to change those camera angles. And then now we do support it. Simply have them come back to the store, reflash the module to the latest firmware, and then that feature will work. So it's not any additional parts. It's simply just updating the firmware on the Maestro module. So, and then of course, I picked Honda in this example because Honda, as everybody knows, in a lot of their cars, they have what's called lane watch. So the lane watch camera is the camera that's in the side view mirror that is tied to the turn signal. So when you're traveling on the highway and you want to see your blind spot, you can turn your turn signal on. It automatically triggers the side view camera. Well, in Honda's case, we offer the integration for that lane watch camera right in our T-harness. So there's an integration wire for the reverse camera, and then there's a second one that's labeled lane watch. And that would go to your secondary input on your aftermarket radio. And we read all of the vehicle's turn signal data on CAN, and then we just tell the aftermarket radio the turn signal's on, switch to this camera. And the nice thing about this feature too is that it's not just limited to cars that came with it from the factory. So my car, I have a 14 Edge, and it did not have a lane watch camera. Obviously, it was 2014, and I just added one. I ordered a aftermarket camera, surface mount camera, and I installed it into my side view mirror, connected to the back of the radio, and again, we're just simply telling the aftermarket radio where the turn signal's on, and you assign that camera to a specific location through the aftermarket radio's camera assignment menu. So the radio does have to have the ability to do that, but if it does, you can.
So hold on. Just to be clear, if the radio is there a special feature for the radio, or are we just talking an additional camera input?
It just needs to have assignable camera inputs.
So for example,
pretty much all your new Kenwood.
Everybody has like a minimum of 2 inputs at this point, right?
Pioneer has it. Yep.
So you can use the main one.
Yes.
Actually, would you even need to? Yes, you need to use the main one to integrate the original backup camera.
The reverse camera. Yep.
And because of this feature, because you're on CAN, you get the information about the signals.
Yep.
And therefore be able to assign it. So the only caveat is if your head unit has an additional input to receive it.
At least 2 or more camera inputs. So like I know like Pioneer, I think Pioneer and Kenwood on their newer models have up to 4 camera inputs. Yeah. And all 4 of those camera inputs, I think the reverse is always assigned to reverse, and then the other 3 are all selectable, front, left, or right.
Now, so, on your car, on your vehicle, did you select passenger or driver side?
So I did mine on the passenger side. So when I'm changing lanes, I want to be able to see if there's a vehicle in my blind spot, right? So, and the great thing about the way we did it, when we first released this, it was just on no matter when. But I actually complained about it because I was like, it's a cool feature, but I just don't want it coming on while I'm like doing 20 miles an hour in town, right? It's kind of annoying. So we actually give you the ability to assign the camera to only come on above a certain speed. So we give you one at 10 miles an hour. So that way, if you're sitting at a red light with your turn signal on, you don't have the camera on, right? The vehicle has to be traveling over 10 miles an hour. But we also give it, I believe, over 40 miles an hour. So that way, for someone like myself, I don't want it to come on when I'm in town at all, because all the roads around me are single lane. So, I don't need to see my blind spot. I only want it to be on when I'm on a highway, a major highway that has multiple lanes. So I set mine to above 40 miles an hour. That way that camera does not come on unless I'm traveling over 40 miles an hour. So we give you a little bit of extra features than you even get from the factory to be able to kind of fine tune it to how you want it to be.
That is a very factory feel ADAS feature that I, for one, was not aware of.
Exactly.
Chris, were you aware of this one?
No, I was not aware about it.
Yep.
And it's very interesting.
And again, this is all firmware related. So if you had a radio with assignable camera inputs and it didn't have it, then you could just reflash the RR and it'll add this option in. So, it's a good way also of getting a customer back into the store. Maybe you sold them a radio that had assignable camera inputs. You call them up and say, hey, listen, you could add a side view camera, a lane watch camera. You just need to buy the camera and come in and have me install it and reflash the module, and you're good to go. So
beautiful.
Really great feature to obviously for add-on sales. So. Okay, so just tying into our camera integration, we're really focused a lot on camera integration lately. So some of the other features we have are our advanced camera feature menu, and this is actually where you would also turn on the side view camera as well. But we have some other camera features in there. The first being smart parking, which I'm going to explain what it is, low speed trigger. And then we also have a 4x4 trigger. And all of these, if you notice up in the upper right-hand corner here, have a YouTube icon. That means I have a YouTube video on our YouTube channel that explains this feature in depth, how to set it up, gives you examples of them working so you can really see them. The videos, I think, only about 5 minutes long. So it gives you a really simple layout of everything. But like I said, I'm going to go through what they do and how they work. So smart parking is really, I like to call it, it's just parallel parking mode. Okay, so if you've ever driven in a vehicle that had a front camera from the factory, then you know how it works. When you go to parallel park, you put the car in reverse, the backup camera comes on, you back up, then you put it in drive to pull forward, the front camera comes on, and it will repeat that cycle until you've completed parking. Now, that's great, but if say somebody wanted to do that from an aftermarket standpoint, they install an aftermarket radio. The problem with solutions and aftermarket radios in general is, unlike the reverse camera input, there's a trigger wire which you connect to your reverse light. There is not a front camera trigger wire, and a lot of times vehicles, that's all on data, so we don't know when the vehicle's in drive. But when you use an RR, we're reading all of that information on CAN. So we know when the vehicle's in reverse and when the vehicle's in drive. So you literally don't even have to hook up your reverse wire. It just works through our 4-pin data cable. So we basically can copy the way a factory front camera integrates to a car on an aftermarket radio. So again, same concept as before. The radio does have to have a rear camera input and a secondary camera input. But again, pretty much all your radios in the last few years have been coming with that. So, it really isn't an issue anymore. But again, just copies the way a factory camera works. And just so everybody's aware too, if you're pulling out of a parking spot and you put the car in reverse, the reverse camera comes on. You put it in drive to pull away. The front camera will come on until you exceed 10 miles an hour, and then the camera will shut off. So again, works exactly the way it did from the factory. Our low speed trigger is really exactly what it sounds like. It's triggering your camera to come on at low speeds. All right. So if you have a car like myself, one of my cars is very low to the ground. I'm always concerned pulling into parking spots. I don't want to tag the front bumper. You can actually have your front camera turn on when you're traveling under a certain speed. And we gave you a lot of settings to really set it up to work exactly how you would want it to work, because everybody's going to be different when they want that camera to come on. So the way it works is we give you 4 settings. We give you an on speed. All right. So that's the speed at or below that the camera will turn on. So if you set that to 5 miles an hour, as soon as the vehicle's traveling 5 miles an hour, the front camera turns on. The off speed is the speed at which you want the camera to go off of once you've exceeded the set mile per hour. So obviously you wouldn't set this to 5 miles an hour. You would set it to something much higher, like maybe 7 or 10 miles an hour. That way, when you're driving and the camera turns on when you've hit 5 miles an hour, it won't shut off if you go 5.5 miles an hour, right? It won't shut off until you've exceeded that speed that you set it at. Then we also have time to off it, or time to on at low speed. In some cases, especially if you're driving in traffic, you don't necessarily want that camera clicking on every single time you're traveling 5 miles an hour. You might want to say, I want it to come on once I've hit 5 miles an hour, but not for 5 seconds after, right? So you hit 5 miles an hour and then it'll start counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then the camera will turn on, right? So this allows you to fine tune that camera trigger so that while you're driving around in a parking lot, it comes on when you want it to, but when you're sitting in heavy traffic and you're inching your way forward, it's not constantly clicking on every time you move.
Because that could get annoying.
Yeah.
Exactly. So we give you all of these settings to really fine tune it to, you know, your customer or you, or, you know, wherever it's installed. And then the last one is time to off at 0 miles per hour. This basically is a delay that once you've actually stopped the vehicle, you can say, well, I don't want it to turn off for 5 seconds, 10 seconds, whatever. Again, we give you a whole list of options. So again, it's really one of those settings or one of those features where you have to spend some time setting it up. And it may even be you show the customer what these do and they go and play around with it and set it up to their liking. And then, of course, you know, something that always comes up is some people are like, hey, that's great and all, but I just want to be able to turn my front camera on with a steering wheel button. And we still offer that capability. So when you're flashing in WebLink, you can assign the front camera to a steering wheel button. In fact, you can assign any camera input to a steering wheel button. So if you want your side view camera, your front camera, your reverse camera to come on by the press of a steering wheel button or a press and hold, you can do that. So some people just want to be able to press a button and the camera come on. And we give you that as well as in addition to all of these features. So the last one is 4x4 off-road trigger. And this one is as self-explanatory as it can be. It's a trigger, a camera trigger that will turn your front camera or a side camera on, whatever, when your vehicle is placed into 4x4. So if you have a vehicle like a Jeep Wrangler or, you know, a Durango that has 4x4, we give you the ability to switch it on when it's placed into 4 low or 4 high/low. And then as soon as you put it in, front camera comes on, and obviously you can toggle back and forth between the GUI and the camera screen. But again, it's just there for those off-road guys that want to integrate those exterior cameras.
That's just a testament to how strong that market is right now.
It is a huge market. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely. Okay, so some other things. Exclusive, obviously, climate controls on the aftermarket radio. We are the only company that can do that with, you know, your name brand radios, your Kenwoods, your Alpines, your Sonys. I know there are some custom fit ones that are built specific for a vehicle that can do it, but as far as your general aftermarket radios go, we're the only ones that can take factory climate and put it on the aftermarket radio. The other thing that's really important too here is, if you notice, a lot of our dash kits now are starting to integrate the factory controls below the radio. So we do this in Chrysler, we do this in Ford, where we keep all of the factory climate buttons as well as the radio buttons, and they go below the radio. In most solutions that do this, other than our products, those controls just no longer work. You know, in fact, some of the kits actually remove them altogether. We keep them and we allow them to work on the aftermarket radio. So the volume will do the volume; it's hard coded. Tune will do the seek, just like it would from the factory, and then the media button will do source, and then the buttons, the 1 through 6 around the radio, we allow you to assign those like a steering wheel button, so you can actually program them to turn on a front camera. You could link it to the climate screen. Anything you want that we offer in that list, they can be assigned there. So,
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Is this only available if you have auto climate control digital?
What is only available?
The on-screen climate
controls.
Yes, is that only? It's if you have manual climate control, that won't be a feature. Yes,
well, we can do it on some manual climate vehicles. So, like take the Mustang for example. That was one of our first. Most Mustangs don't have dual climate, right? It's just, you know, it actually was just a basic climate control. We do it in that car, But for most vehicles with manual climate, no, we do. There are some that we do it on, but most of them I would say we don't. The car really had to have factory touchscreen climate for us to do this feature. I think the Mustang and the Camaro are the two examples where they didn't have a touchscreen climate and we're adding touchscreen climate. Most of the other vehicles that we cover had to have it from the factory.
Perfect.
Active contour seats from Ford. This we have a video on, so I'm not going to spend a ton of time talking about it. Plus, it's kind of a smaller feature. There's obviously not a ton of vehicles out there that have this, but it was a question that came up. If I bought a vehicle, a Platinum Ford F-150, it's got the massaging seats and the lumbar control. How do I control that? Because it was done on the aftermarket or the factory screen. The answer is we retain all of that. We have a seats button that will populate on the touchscreen. When you press it, it just takes you into the menu that allows you to control the lumbar, the bolster, and the active massage. So it'll look different and operate a little differently, but functionally, it will do everything that the factory did. Some other things too that I wanted to just touch base on is are the way we integrate advanced safety features. So I'm sure everybody's come across this at one point or another. You have a customer looking to upgrade their radio. They have, a collision avoidance. They have blind spot detection or cross traffic alert, whatever it may be. The way these systems worked 5-6 years ago was they just had little indicator lights in the cluster or indicator lights in the side view mirrors. Newer cars are doing it a little different. They are using audible tones because they've really done a lot of research and development in these advanced safety systems and found out that our ears react much faster than our eyes do, right? You're not always looking at your side view mirror when your, cross traffic alert goes off or your blind spot goes off. But if you're merging into traffic and your blind spot goes off, it'll play a loud tone through the right side or the left side of the car, and your immediate reaction is to jerk back into the lane you were in. The problem with that is that when we replace the factory radio, all those audio signals are done through CAN. And although we can retain them, most aftermarket solutions will play them through a chime speaker, including us. We actually, for a long time, only offered a chime speaker. So we're basically summing all of those alerts into one speaker. It's not how the vehicle was intended to work, but it does retain the functionality. We have been pushing a lot recently to get the aftermarket radio companies to allow us to be able to send the alert to the speaker, the correct speaker in the car. And there are a handful of radios that do that now, which I'll cover in a second. But essentially now what you'll get is when the blind spot detection is detected, you will get an alert through the correct speaker in the car, the one that the factory intended it to play through. So this is just further integrating your advanced safety systems so that they work exactly the way they did when the customer bought the car. The goal here is when the customer comes to pick up the vehicle, you're going to show them how all their new features work, not say, well, this still works, but it doesn't work as good as it did from the factory, right? We want to keep everything exactly the way it was and just make this thing better, right? And that's really our goal, is retaining everything and making it work better. Some of the newer radios are also now giving you a visual monitoring of your blind spot or your advanced safety systems. So the new Kenwood and JVC 10.1-inch screens, they will have these widgets on the home screen that you will be able to view, have a visual monitoring of them. So blind spot, lane departure, front collision. So in addition to the audible tones that you get, you will also get these visual monitoring as well. Currently, it is only available on these models, but I know that other brands will probably be adding this in the future. Start-stop memory. This is kind of a small feature, but in my mind, it's an awesome one. I'm sure everybody here knows what start-stop is. The vehicle shutting off when you're sitting at a red light. Not everybody likes it. I am one of those. I personally can't stand it. It drives me nuts.
I haven't met somebody that likes it yet, Matt.
I know. Yeah, I know. I haven't either. But some people don't mind it. But the bottom line with it is that when you press to turn it off in the car and you get out of the car and you get back in, it reverts back to being on again. So every single time you get in the car, you got to press that button. When you install an RR with an aftermarket Maestro compatible radio, we actually can memorize the state of that switch. So if you get in the car, the first time you install the radio and you press the actual button in the car to turn off your start-stop memory, a menu is going to appear on the radio, and it's going to say, Maestro can remember your start-stop button selection and automatically recall it each time you get in the car. Would you like to turn this on? So you say yes. If you've turned it off, when you get out of the car and you get back in, the Maestro will automatically turn it back off as soon as the car powers on. So it's basically memorizing the state that it was in when you got out of the car. So if you press it and it shuts it and it turns it back on, it'll turn it back. It'll just keep it on when you get back in the car. So we're just recalling the last state it was when you got out of the car. So kind of a small feature, but might be a pretty important one for certain customers. All right, so RR2. I know RR2's been out for a little while. I'm sure a lot of you know what the features are. It does everything the RR does. Uses all the existing T harnesses except for the ones that require the RR2. The Bluetooth flashing, which is out now. The programmable outputs are really what I wanted to talk about because they are a little more on the complex side, and not everybody understands what they do and how involved they are. So I want to talk a little bit about that. Again, we have 3 CAN channels, so there are some applications that are shipping now that require you to use the RR2. We need that 3rd CAN channel in order to integrate to some of the new Hyundai Kia vehicles and to some of the new Subaru vehicles that have 3 CAN networks in them. So, and then of course we do Escort and K40 radar in the RR2, where we just do K40 and RR. So the programmable outputs. So just a quick overview of how they work. There are 3 outputs, negative outputs. They're 350 milliamps, so plenty enough to trigger a relay. And you can use these outputs to do so many different things. You could use it to turn on exterior or interior lighting, accent lighting. You could trigger a camera with them. You could put a delay on your amplifier turn on. We are talking about blind spot detection. Let's say you have an aftermarket blind spot detection system. You want to add it. Well, the problem with newer cars is the turn signals are on CAN, and most aftermarket ADAS systems require an analog input for your turn signal. So how do you convert a digital signal from your turn signal into an analog signal that your ADAS system can read? Well, this is the answer to your problem. What we can do is we can read something in the vehicle on CAN and give you a negative triggered out analog output, right? So it just allows you to read something on CAN and convert it to an analog output, which opens the door to doing so many different things in the vehicle from an integration standpoint. So, we can do a lot of different things with it, but the most important thing you can take away from this is that if you have something in the car on CAN that you want to be able to convert into an analog, the RR2 can do that through the programmable outputs. So currently, the way you program these, you need what's called our configurable output loader. Okay, the configurable output loader is a PC program, and I know that WebLink Desktop works on both Mac and PC. Eventually, this will be integrated over to WebLink Desktop. Right now, we're using it as a separate program to kind of work out any bugs. We're taking suggestions from retailers like, hey, could you add this or do that? And once we've really dialed it in and fine-tuned it, then we'll spend the time to integrate it as another step in WebLink Update or WebLink Desktop. So, but for now, we're just using this simple PC program. You can get it at one of 3 places. You can go to our support links tab on our website. You can go to, at the end of flashing on WebLink Desktop, you'll see a link at the bottom to download the guide and the program. And you can also get it on the first page of the install guide. There's a link there as well. So there are the 3 different places you can get it. You can literally run it. When you click on that link, this is what you're going to see. It's going to have like a little instruction manual, and then you will also have a exe file, which you can just double click and run directly from here. And when you open it, you're going to need to close WebLink Desktop first, and then run the executable file. And this is what it's going to look like. You're going to have the RR2 plugged into your USB port on your computer. You're going to assign the COM port, and then you're going to click connect, and it's going to say rebooting device. Please disconnect the RR from the computer and then reconnect it. You're just going to follow that step and then hit OK, and then it's going to connect, right? Everything's going to open up. So what you're looking at on here is the 3 programmable outputs that's broken into 3 banks, right? So you have output 1, output 2, output 3, and as you can see, they're color coded based on the color of the wire on the harness for the programmable outputs. So you have white, red, white, blue, white, green. I'm just going to show you one because they're all the same, just different outputs. So when you look at this, you have these 4 different outputs. You have follower, and what follower is going to do is it's going to allow you to assign something in the vehicle. Say we'll just use the headlight switch, all right, as an example. If you select your headlight switch and you say, I want the output to be on when my headlights are on, it's just going to follow whatever that switch is doing. So when I turn my headlights on, the output's going to be on. When I turn my headlights off, the output's going to be off. So it's just following whatever you've assigned, whatever state that button is in. Latch allows you to create one thing to trigger the signal on and something else to turn it off. And I'll use drive gear to trigger it on, and then reverse gear to trigger it off. I don't know what example you would use that for, but I'm just giving you an example. So,
maybe drive and park. Drive and park.
Right, drive and park, right?
Okay.
So you want something to turn on while the vehicle's in drive. You can set the trigger signal as drive, and then park is the reset signal. So as soon as the vehicle goes in drive, the output's going to be on, and then when you put it in park, the output's going to go off. Toggle is if you're going to use a button that doesn't have an on-off state. It's like a steering wheel button, right? It's just a button. If you wanted to use a steering wheel button to turn something on and off, you can use the toggle feature. So you would set it to toggle, set the trigger as your steering wheel button, whatever one you want to assign, and then it will just, every time you press it, it's going to turn it on, press it, turn it off, press it, turn it on, press it, turn it off. So, and then custom opens up pretty much all of the features. And I'm going to talk about some of the other things here in a second. So it really just gives you infinite possibility and is the most general output type. So if you look, again, our trigger signals are based on what we have available to us in the vehicle, what we read on CAN. So if you program this for a Ford and you drop down the trigger list, it's going to have a whole list of options for that particular Ford. But then if you flash it for a Chrysler and go to do it, it might be different. The list might be different. It really just depends on what we can read in that vehicle on data. So that the list will be dependent on the vehicle. So again, we just set our trigger as our reverse gear and reset as our drive gear. And then you can say, I want the trigger signal to turn it on and the reset signal to turn it off, or you could do it vice versa. It just allows you to set that up. I can set a delay. So a delay on would say when the trigger signal is active, I want it to turn on 3 seconds or 3 milliseconds after the trigger signal is detected, right? So it allows you to set a delay. I can also set a time on. So I can say, once the trigger signal turns on, I want this output to stay on for 15 seconds and then shut off, okay? And then I can even repeat that process. So I could say I want it to turn on for 5 seconds and then shut off, and I want it to repeat that process 10 times. So like, let's say you wanted something like a third brake light to blink 4 times very quick. You could set your repetitions to 4, and you could have your delay, your time on to 350 milliseconds. So when you press your foot brake, that brake's going to flash 4 times very quickly. So again, you can do a lot of different things with this. The sky's the limit. The installers, those guys are going to really have the brainstorming to say, oh, this is cool. I can do a lot of neat things with this. But it's really getting in here and playing with this to understand how it works. And so then once you've completed your outputs, you're going to uncheck any ones that you're not using and then hit send, and it's going to upload it to the RR, and you're good to go. So
questions. Number 1, this is specifically RR2 feature only, right?
Correct.
Okay. Is there an on-screen interface for trigger instead of.
Right. Yep. So we'll get to that in 1 second.
Oh, sorry, I'm jumping the gun. All right, that was the first thing that came to mind.
No, actually, you're not. And the reason that I wanted that is a good question to ask here is, so once you install it in the car, you may want to test it before you actually make the connections to your aftermarket device. So we actually, in the settings menu of OEM setup, we give you the ability to test your outputs. So you'll see trigger 1, trigger 2, trigger 3. When you press it, you can hook your meter up to the output of the RR2, and you'll be able to see whether the trigger is happening the way you programmed it to. So technically, yes, we do have an on-screen, but to get to your point, some radios have touchscreen buttons that can be used to activate those outputs. Not all of them do. Right now, it's just the Kenwood 10.1 inch. I know that I'm pretty sure Kenwood's going to be adding them to next year's radios as well. I know some of the other radio brands, I think Pioneer also and Alpine, have expressed interest in adding these buttons as well. So you'll have 3 buttons that allow you to trigger those outputs like, say, a steering wheel button would. So Kenwood gives you a whole bunch of icons, as you can see here. There's a variety to pick from, and you can even label the buttons. So when you're in the configurable output loader, you're going to set your trigger signal as radio GUI button 1, 2, or 3. And then you'll be able to go down and select your icon that you want. And then you'll be able to write in the name of whatever you want that button to be labeled as. So we give you a lot of flexibility there.
I can't help but think about, how lighting is so important these days in builds. Yep. And I want my light bar, I want my ditch lights, and I want my front bumper LED bar. And if I could control that, that's just awesome.
Yep. You'll be able to do that here. And again, you'll be able to fully customize it to make it, resemble or have a button that looks like we have a lighting one. They have a, air suspension one. They have a winch one.
Just the concept of not having a physical button or switch or something that I have to alter to fit or you know what I'm saying? To have it just right where that interface is, where it's supposed to be on the screen, very OE feeling. That's awesome.
So a lot of cool things you could do. The other thing too I want to point out is, and I know that's a lot of information to take in. We have a YouTube video on this, and it literally explains everything step by step, and we give some really good real world examples of how you can use this, and you can actually see it working in the video. So if you have time, watch the video. It is one of our longer ones. I think it's about 10 minutes long, but it does a good job of explaining the entire process, from downloading and installing the program to setting it up, flashing it and programming it, and then actually using it. So like I said, it's on our YouTube channel. It's called Maestro Programmable Outputs, and it just explains the whole thing from start to finish. So if you have time, take a look and watch it.
Awesome.
I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this just because there's some other things I want to talk about. But mobile flashing for RR2, obviously that's one of the bigger features that everybody knows about that is different from RR to RR2. This is live. You can download the app today. We make it for Apple. We make it for Android. It is available. It's a great feature. Really, I will say, if you still have the ability to flash from your computer, I would do that because the time difference is significant. To flash on a computer, it takes like 30 seconds to upload the firmware. This can take upwards of 5 to 10 minutes, depending on the size of the firmware, because it's being done over Bluetooth. But where it really is beneficial is if a customer comes back a couple days later and they're like, hey, I need to update my firmware on the RR, or I want to change the steering wheel button. You don't have to pull the car apart to get to the module. You can just walk out with your phone, pair it, and update the firmware. So a really valuable tool to save you time in updating firmware. So Escort integration, this has been out for a while. The one thing I wanted to point out is that the cable, the interface cable that goes from the Escort to the RR2, that is something that Escort provides. You have to get it directly from them. We are also recommending to not use the audio cable that sends the alerts from the Escort to allow the alerts to play through the speakers in the car. I know that sounds like it's an awesome feature, but the problem is that aftermarket radios do not have the ability to mix the audio. So what that means is that every time you get an alert on your radar, it's going to mute the music that you're listening to, play the alert, and then unmute. So if you're in an area where there's a lot of traffic, or I mean a lot of radar interference or whatever, it's just constantly muting your radio, and it can be a little annoying. So I recommend not using the audio cable, leaving the data cable connected, turning the mute off, and it basically just plays the alert through the escort speaker and allows your music to continue playing. We are working with the radar or the radio companies to allow us to mix the audio. So there might be an update down the road that will allow that to work. As far as radio integration goes, we've been doing Kenwood and JVC for a while now. I just wanted to point out on here that we also are supporting Pioneer now. So it's going to be their DMHW models. So that's their mechless wireless CarPlay units also have radar integration. And I'm going to skip to this point because there was something, I know I'm getting a little tight on time. So I just wanted to talk about some of the new features of our website. So again, I'm sure most of you know now that our website has changed. We have been working on this for a long time, and it's finally here. And I know, some people have had, it's been a rough transition because they get used to using our old website the way it was. And now you've got this new website that you don't understand. And it's taking you more time to locate certain features. So I just want to go over some things. And to be honest, we've made some changes since the launch, and a lot of those changes were based on the feedback that we got from retailers. So obviously, when you go to our website now, you have your fit guide right in the center. And, if I pick a vehicle on our old website, what it would do is it would automatically show you a list. And that list was, added and retained features. But the problem with doing it that way was not all radios have the same features. So we weren't giving you a detailed list based on the radio, and we wanted to be able to provide that. Not only for retailers, but for consumers that use our site as well. So when you go in now, what you will see is you have 5 solutions for your vehicle. You have radio replacement, dash kits, add or replace an amp, accessories, and radar detector. So depending on what you're looking to do, if you're radio replacement, you can look at the radio replacement solution. If you just want to look at our dash kits, you can look at the dash kits. If you're looking to do an amp replacement, you can just look at all the accessories that we make for that vehicle. This will give you a refined list of anything that we make for a 2014 Ford Edge. So if I click on radio replacement, it's going to ask me, are you going to use RR or RR2? And then it's going to select trim. And again, these are all very important things that we need to know to give you a detailed list. So if I select my Ford radio 8-inch screen, now it's going to ask me to select a radio. And these are steps that we didn't ask you to do before. But again, it was really important that we gave you the ability, or we knew this information. So, and a lot of it had to do with, like in this particular car, if I select all radios, you notice it only gives me Maestro compatible radios because you can only do a Maestro compatible radio in that car. So what we were finding is that people would go, oh, they make this cool solution for my car, and then they'd go out and buy a Boss radio or something that wasn't Maestro compatible, and they go, well, your fit guide said it would work. So that's really why we've done it this way, is make you select a radio, because we need to know. And then you can see we give you this nice slider to see the before and after with the dash kit. We tell you all the features that we add or retain, and then down at the bottom, all the accessories, required and optional accessories. So one thing that we've made a change on is for retailers that are just looking for a quick view, you can actually just go up to the menu button in the upper right-hand corner, and you can go down to product and feature lookup. So from here, you can say, I want to do radio replacement, and I can select the exact same thing, Ford. Of course, now it wants to move slow on me.
Well, you are streaming video at the same time.
Yeah, that's true. I'm going to select the same car, Now you would notice here it says select a radio, but you don't actually have to do that. You can just wait a minute and it's just moving really slow. So now here you've got your list that you had on our old website. So if you're looking for just a quick lookup, you can go to product and feature lookup in the menu. You could even bookmark this page and then just enter the year, make, and model of the vehicle, and it's going to give you a product comparison. But again, it's not going to be based on the radio. So some things are going to be dependent on the radio that you are installing. So, like you'll notice here, we don't list dynamic parking lines and stuff like that. Climate control is obviously going to be dependent on the radio. So you need to be careful on this, that, you know that the radio is an important step in this process. So, but again, we did this for the retailers because we know, sometimes you just want to do a quick lookup. The other thing that I wanted to point out.
Sorry, I was just going to say, this is very important because a lot of times you're on the phone, you want to quote a customer, you want to know what's available.
Right. Yep.
And you get it quickly done.
Yes. Yep. That's exactly why we did this. So, and we did it for amp replacement as well.
We got only a few minutes left here. Is there anything we want to wrap up on, Matt?
Yeah, the only other thing that I wanted to talk about, and this is just one portion of it, is we give you the ability to look up your flash. So normally when you call tech support, the first thing they ask you is, what's your WebLink user account name, so that they can look up your flash. And there's a lot of information in there that's very important. So I'm just going to give you an example here. I just go in and I type in the serial number of a flashed unit, right? So I'm just picking one I got here at my desk. Okay. Find device. And now what it's going to do is it's going to show me the product, serial number, what its current firmware is loaded on there, so you can check it to make sure it's the most current, the car, the radio you're using, and the serial radio number. So, and it even tells you the flash date. It tells you the system configuration, what accessories you're using, all the steering wheel buttons that you have programmed, both press and hold. It gives you a link to the guide, so you can just quickly download the guide, or you can go to we even have any videos that we have there. So that's one. The other thing too is you can go to video help. We have all of our videos here. You can also go to our guides link, type in the year, make, model of a vehicle, and it's going to show you all the install guide specific to that firmware, not every single guide we have. So we're just trying to make it a little easier for installers and sales guys to get information a lot quicker. So there are just a few things that I wanted to point out that were new on the website. So
awesome. Well, here's what I have to say. In a quick 2-minute summary, first of all, Matt, can't thank you enough for being on. You always bring a wealth of knowledge. I think anybody who watches this will agree, and dealers are very appreciative of how you share that information. Listen, man, iData, Maestro, hardcore company. Man, you guys are doing things so like next level, so deep. I mean,
it is
really
it's exciting. It's exciting product for sure.
It's not only is it exciting. I think what you've demonstrated in this last hour is for me, those unique features are really what separate yourselves from anything else in the market, but also providing those sales incentives and tools for dealers to be able to convert those clients into you might want to look at this one because it's a little bit more money, but check this out. It does this, and this.
And that is definitely the key. Yep.
And there's something to be said about convenience and in the theme of you have a new website. It looks awesome, but it's going to take some time for people to get used to, right?
Yep.
But going along that whole theme of how people don't like change, well, it's the same thing in a car environment. They just spend so much money in their vehicle. They obviously love their vehicle, or else they wouldn't be upgrading their vehicle. So when you tell them that we can put this in, but you're going to have to sacrifice, the moment you start going down that path, you're not doing a favor for yourself, for your overall sale.
And when it first launched, we talked a lot about gauges and stuff like that. And I can understand a customer going, I don't need that. I drive a minivan. I don't need gauges, right? Or any of that extra stuff.
Sure.
But now we're talking about things like camera integration. We're talking about things like losing factory menu options. And that is something that some customers are just not going to be willing to part with. So it's important that the retailer understands the level of integration that we are providing. And so that they can explain to the customer, well, if you do this interface, here's what you're going to lose. If you do this interface, here's what you're not going to lose. So,
and in some cases, here's a couple features you're going to gain.
You're going to gain, exactly. Yep.
Very cool. Matt, thank you so much.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you for having me on.
Looking forward to having you again soon. Take care.
All right, thanks. Bye.
So, Chris, Matt is
Yes.
everything that we expected, of course.
Of course.
Give
Great
me one item that
presentation.
you were surprised to learn about today.
Well, the new MRR2, right? With the added features and the different inputs and outputs, right? So
that is a delicious feature.
What about you?
I didn't know. Here's what I learned. I didn't know that those features were exclusive to Maestro.
Yeah.
I thought,
they have a lot to offer.
They have a lot to offer, and I think they're not hiding the fact that their stuff may be a little bit more higher on the price range. But look what you're getting. So I guess you got to gauge that based on your sale and based on your customer. But the most important takeaway is Sobel's got all the solutions that you need.
Have everything in
whatever radio that you want to put in
for you guys. So
including Maestro. Absolutely.
That's it.
Hey, I'm going to put up the info just one more time here.
Yep.
Point Imports distributor for Maestro products. I've known Sobel and Danielle, those guys, for so long, and they've always been on point when it comes to solutions products, and this Maestro line is no exception.
No, for sure. Give us a call, guys. Any questions? We're there to help you.
Chris will show up at your door personally.
Please, after the lockdown, please show up, all right?
Yeah, absolutely. Chris, thank you so much for taking the time, man.
Thank you.
Talk to you soon.
Thank you. Bye now.
All right, there you have it. Cool lunchtime learning session. Chris, Matt always brings a lot. I'm very happy that he was able to streamline that, but we did learn a lot. New website, a couple exclusive features, so on and so forth. And got to remind you, if you're interested in some Maestro products, check out their website. If not, give the folks at Sobel Imports a call. That's it for today. Hey, I got to remind you, we got a big CMA Live going down tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern. Some big guests. We're talking about digital sound processing, DSP, of course, and that's a big category. It's so big, we actually had to split that theme into 2 episodes. This one will be part 1. Listen to this lineup. We've got Nick Wingate from Moscone. We've got Ken Ward coming in for Hertz Audio. Fred Lynch from Arc Audio. We've got Chris Bennett coming in from Audio Control. And, of course, Larry Penn over at MSC will be covering some DSP for Audio Tech Fisher. That goes down tonight at 8 p.m. But for now, I'm going to sign out. Thanks for tuning in to this session of CMA Connected, presented by SiriusXM. I'm your host, Ben Wu. Until next time, we connect.